Everyone. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for joining us. One in six people worldwide experience infertility. It's a staggering number that highlights just how common this issue has become. Today, we're going to explore the connection between environmental toxicants and fertility. From chemicals in everyday products to air pollution, these factors are impacting our reproductive health more than we realize. Finding practical ways to minimize your exposure to these chemicals can be challenging. And that's why we're so glad to chat on IG Live today with Amanda Lee Bodine, a Low-Tox Consultant. During this live, we're going to discuss when you should start preparing your body for conception, how to limit your exposure to harmful chemicals during this important time, ways to vet personal care products for toxicants, and so much more. I saw him. Hello, hi Amanda.
Hi, Jenna. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm well. I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I'm
Tell
excited.
us a little bit about yourself, like how you became a low tox consultant.
Yeah. So it's kind of a weird thing to be a low tox consultant. It's definitely new, but I'm actually a former educator. I was an elementary school teacher, and I had my first daughter, my only child, late in life. I was 36 when I got pregnant with her. 36 when I gave birth to her. So I had the pleasure of having one of those geriatric pregnancies, and that was fantastic. But because of that, I got a little extra attention, which is great. But there are so many things that I didn't really realize that I could have been doing during my pregnancy, even leading up to my pregnancy in that preconception phase. For me, it was really like, oh, I'm going to get off birth control and let's see what happens. And there was so much that I could have been doing, and I didn't realize it until after I'd given birth to her. And I started, I gave birth to my daughter, and then we had the pandemic. So not only was I home with her on maternity leave, but then I wasn't going back to the classroom. We were all staying at home. And it was an isolating time for everyone, even more so being a brand new mom and totally freaked out and not knowing what was going to happen. But I had a lot of time on my hands, like we all did. And I just really started finding community in these spaces, like around clean beauty, personal care products and things like that. It was sort of my introduction into environmental toxins and hormone disruptors. And so that's that's like that kind of became my whole world, like digging into that. And I realized there was so much I did not know during my preconception and pregnancy phases that would have been great to know, good things to know. My daughter, she was full term, but she had extremely low birth weight. She only weighed 5 pounds, and that is connected to an environmental toxicant that we can talk about. But, there are things that, just would have been invaluable to know that I didn't. And as I learned more about it, I realized that there was a gap in that sort of information for women who want to become mothers, families who are trying to have babies, and not knowing the environmental toxicants can have an impact on your ability to conceive, but also the health of your baby. So, yeah, that's how I got started into it.
And now you're spreading that knowledge, which is what everyone needed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really become a passion project of mine. More so than anything, I just want my space to be a place where women and families and pregnant people can find the information that they need. When they're embarking on that preconception journey, because as we'll talk about too, fertility is an issue. Couples are struggling to get pregnant, and sometimes environmental toxicants are a huge factor in that.
And then we also often always talked about, if you start intervening and start trying to make changes during this preconception period, it's literally you get the biggest bang for your buck.
Do.
Because not only you're optimizing your own fertility, you're creating such a good environment for your unborn baby. And then once like you get to postpartum and once your kid is growing up, like you literally have them, you're all set up to
You really
do that.
are. You really are. I mean, I did not. know what an environmental toxicant was or a hormone disruptor prior to getting pregnant. I didn't know. I didn't care. It just wasn't. It just wasn't something that was on my radar in any way. And I think for a lot of women that is the case when they finally decide that they want to get pregnant and they realize that it's not as easy as they thought it would be, or for whatever reason they may be struggling, or even if they're not struggling, this mother instinct takes over, and you're like, what can I do to protect myself and my baby? And knowing about environmental toxicants and mitigating your exposures to them is really one way to do that.
Can you talk a bit about your experience as an educator and then some of the associations you made between children's health and their lifestyle and environment?
Yes, yeah. So I taught elementary school, so I had littles, but I noticed, things like, and I think anybody with children, anybody with school age children especially will, we notice that there are higher incidences of, kids who have behavioral issues, social emotional issues, and then also, attention and focus issues. And so this was in the classroom. 100%. As a teacher, any teacher can tell you that these are things that we're noticing in our children. But what I kind of put together later after I left the classroom was, the things that we're doing unintentionally to make things harder for our children. School breakfast and school lunch programs are absolutely imperative, and they have to happen. But we're feeding kids ultra processed foods. They have a lot of food dyes, which we know are linked to behavior and emotional issues. um, and then not only are we feeding them those types of foods, but we're heating them up in plastic. I mean, these cafeteria kitchens are not cooking foods from scratch. That just doesn't happen in America anymore. And so, the ultra processed foods are coming in, they're in plastic packaging, they're getting reheated in plastic packaging. I don't know how many times I unwrapped a pancake out of a plastic bag and handed it to my kids. And then everything is also getting heated up in aluminum foil, which we know is a neurotoxin. So we're not doing them any favors. We're rewarding them with candy. Those ingredients are terrible, but more so, they're getting more exposure to the artificial dyes that they don't need. And then we're handing them a Clorox wipe and telling them to wipe off their desk. And we're, pumping hand sanitizer into their little hands all day long. And so we're not doing them any favors. And it's not malicious intent. We just don't know better. And it's the systems in place really that need to be overhauled in that regard. But we'll see how.
That's so true, and so much to be done in that
Yes.
realm too. Um, getting the teachers educated, getting the parents educated, so then we can prevent our kids from exposing to a lot of these
Uh,
things, especially during this like a growth period.
Yeah, exactly. Because pound for pound, I mean, little babies and our children, they are exposed to these environmental toxicants more so than we are as adults, and their detox pathways are not as developed as ours are, and so they are taking on a greater toxic burden than we are as adults.
Many people tend to lean into calling things like non-toxic to market their services. Why did you decide to lean the term like low tox instead?
Um, because simply put, non-toxic is not a thing. There's no such
So
thing as
true.
non-toxic. There just isn't. And it's misleading marketing, I think. I think when, accounts like mine and they're talking about non-toxic things, they're not, a huge brand out in the world, intentionally misleading people. But it is misleading to think that something could possibly be non-toxic. And it's just not actually, it's not an option. It's not realistic. And so I chose low tox early on. There were some other voices in the space, and I thought, I don't like this non toxic idea. Everything's a chemical, everything has some level of harm, depending on who you are and your predispositions. And so it's just not, I just don't think it's accurate. I don't think it's necessarily, I think it gives the idea for some people that there is perfection, and it just doesn't exist. And so I think low tox is just more realistic. And I think hopefully it takes away that burden of I need to be perfect. I need to do this perfectly.
That is so true. Not only like the low tox aspect in products is true, but also this whole burden thing I think is so important for people to understand that it's impossible to be perfect, and then you do what you can, and then you also don't want to be stressed out because oftentimes when people are stressed out, they don't do anything. They just like paralyzed.
Exactly. Analysis paralysis, right? You just it's too hard. I don't want to do it. And I run into that a lot. I mean, there are a lot of women who feel that way. Like I can't be perfect. I can't do it all. It's always something else. I thought this was okay and now now you're telling me it's not. I'm overwhelmed. I don't want to do it. I just want to ignore it. And that's, we want to prevent that. Don't yeah.
Absolutely. So today we're discussing like, toxic chemicals and how they can cause burdens during preconception. So let's start with the sort of lesser talked about factor, the infertility struggle, which the males. So you had a great post about environmental chemicals and male infertility. Like, what's the connection?
Yeah. So, male factor infertility is a big deal. And historically, women have always been the ones who have the burden, who take the blame. You're not able to get pregnant. It's obviously your fault. Something you're doing is wrong. And we're realizing, especially with the fantastic work from Dr. Shauna Swan, that male factor infertility is a real issue. In the last 50 years, sperm count has decreased by like 50%, and it's on track to get to zero in less than another 50 years. And so we're looking at issues with not only, amount of sperm, but, how developed that sperm is. So morphology and motility and all of those things, sperm are impacted. They're abnormal. They're not functioning the way they need to at a DNA level. And so that is going to impact negatively a couple's chance of conception. So it isn't just the females. It's just not our bodies that are the issue. Sperm are 50% of the equation, and if they're not healthy, then that is going to impact a couple's ability to conceive.
I also feel like it's always women who take the initiation to think about low tox and then start changing, right? Like a lot of time it's not on men's radar. And I often hear from others like, "Oh, I got my husband to change this and that. I got my boyfriend to change this and that," and they just roll their eyes.
Right, right. I mean, I think the mental load is it's not just, how we divvy up chores in the house and things like that. I mean, I think it's just all sorts of things. In a relationship, typically the woman in the relationship is having to carry that burden. She's carrying the toxic burden and the mental load of worrying about the toxic burden.
Yeah. So, what are some of the most common sources of these harmful chemicals in our everyday lives?
Yeah. So, big ones, especially for male factor infertility, a really big one is phthalates. And so phthalates they're in plastic. They make plastic soft, but they're also in things like fragrances. They're in things like nail polishes and shampoos and hairsprays. Anything that has a synthetic fragrance in it is going to have a phthalate attached to it. So not only do they make plastic soft, but they make fragrances sticky and they make them linger. And so, you're spraying cologne on your body. You're running into like a lot of these phthalates. And so, like I mentioned before, Dr. Shauna Swan's work, she's really noticed that phthalates are have a huge impact on the sperm quality, motility, and damage to DNA at a DNA level. But what we're seeing with phthalates for men, it's mostly reduced semen quality and then lower testosterone levels because it's anti-androgenic. So it's depleting testosterone in the body. And then for women, phthalates have been linked to anovulation, so not releasing an egg when we're supposed to, higher rates of PCOS and ovarian insufficiency. So just like in general, not having enough of a reserve of good quality eggs to work with, each cycle. Um, and so another one though would be BPA. I think a lot of people are a little bit more familiar with BPA. It's definitely on an ingredient list. You can see that, but it's um, it's it's also something that they use in plastics. So typically, anything that is in the kitchen that's that you're gonna be eating off of, drinking out of, BPA is gonna be present. I think a lot of people are a little bit more familiar with it because we have so many BPA free from labels on products. And I think, what people don't understand is, BPA free just means they've added a BPS or a BPF, one of the other bisphenols into the product. But it makes plastics hard. But we also know, we knew this in the 1850s when they synthesized BPA. It is an estrogenic compound. It mimics estrogen in the body. And so it's really not good for men. And it's not good for women too to have that extra estrogen. So for men, it's related to higher rates of erectile dysfunction and the ability to it lowers their sex drive. Ejaculation is a factor. BPA is not good for men. You're drinking lots of water out of plastic water bottles. So it's I just stop doing it. Don't do it. But for women, it makes it harder for them to get pregnant. It increases their risk of miscarriage in the first trimester. They're also more likely to have PCOS and poor egg quality in general. So those are two major ones, but other ones are like flame retardants and pesticides and PFAS chemicals. Those are all big ones when it comes to, what can we reduce our exposure to specifically that can really help with that conception phase, because we're leaning into what's gonna help with egg quality, what's gonna help with sperm quality.
You had a super powerful post about the 3 things you wish you had bought before you had your daughter. Like, please share them with us and explain why. Like, because it's such great advice.
Yeah. That post went viral for more reasons than just the information that was in there, but I was grateful that it did because it reached a lot of people. When I was pregnant with her, because my preconception phase, like I said, I just didn't really know. I was, it was stop birth control and hope. And then getting pregnant with her, I was worried about how pretty to make the nursery and, what boho sheets I was going to have. But really looking back, and what I would want other women to really focus on is it's not so much about how pretty the nursery is, but, are you including a quality air filter in the room? Because, you know, you want to be able to absorb, the harmful particulate matter that's just in the air that could be coming from the mattress, that could be coming from the furniture, and just in general, in the home. But then also focusing on the crib mattress, that's incredibly important. I remember being absolutely shocked that I had to buy a mattress, that it didn't just come with the crib. And so, that was the extent of my knowledge. I had very little knowledge about, what it took to make a nursery. But the crib mattress is extremely important because at this point we're talking about, babies sleeping almost the entire day, and they're sleeping on mattresses of polyurethane foam. So we're concerned about, things like flame retardants and phthalates and formaldehyde and toluene and benzene, like all of these really harmful things that are in conventional crib mattresses. Um, and then, and what I should have included on that post too, honestly, was the water filter. Because not only for babies who are bottle fed, you're mixing water into your formula, but even for the mom who might be breastfeeding, the water that she's taking in, we know that microplastics are in breast milk. We know that PFAS chemicals that they're in our tap water and that we're absorbing them. PFAS chemicals are fat soluble, babies are hanging on to these chemicals. And so a quality water filter is extremely important. And those are really my top 3, get a quality air filter, if anything, just to absorb the off gases and such from the furniture that's in the room. Hopefully you're able to look for furniture that's, gold or LEED certified for the nursery. But if you can't, do your absolute best in that sense, which is why I think the air filter is important. And then, the baby's mattress, the crib mattress, and then the water filter. Yeah, those are my top ones.
Those are huge, and then
They
those are
are.
also captures a lot of the exposure both mom and baby would have, and makes so much sense.
It does. It does. And it's not, and I just want to make it clear too, these items are not cheap. They are expensive and not everybody can afford them. And there are other ways that you can sort of mitigate these types of exposures. You can do your best. Open windows if you can't have an air filter, get a box fan filter or something like that. Maybe if you can't get a nice or an expensive quality crib mattress, get a nice mattress topper that's organic or something like that. So, there's other things you can do, but the goal is that these are the things you're focusing on.
But I also think this is such a good tip because it makes a lot of sense during preparation, right? So if you plan out like buying these semi big ticket items over, say, a year or a year and a half, then that's not like, buying all three together, like, when your baby's born. So it's because it's a lot of budget.
No, you're absolutely right, and it is. And if you are taking the time during your preconception phase and even during pregnancy to really think about it, because you're going to spend the money anyway. New moms who are expecting, like, we're going to spend money. What we do, we're going to buy all the things. So yeah, you're right. To your point, it's just like focus on these things and then worry about the other stuff.
We often tell people in order to detox their bodies, they need to support a healthy system. Tell us why you recommend, protein-rich breakfast to balance hormones, and what are some of your go-to breakfast meals?
Yeah. So, detox pathways is incredibly important, obviously, to support those because our body is going to help, it's going to detox these chemicals, these environmental toxicants and hormone disruptors. Um, Things like the ones like phthalates and BPA, like we're peeing those out. Those are they're not fat soluble, so they're not sticking around like PFAS chemicals necessarily are. But we have to be metabolically healthy in order to also support those detox pathways. And it's one reason too why, mitigating your exposures and limiting your exposures to these toxicants is so important because, you don't want to just say, well, I'm going to pee them out, so it's no big deal. They build up in the body over time, this accumulation factor, right? So like if you're constantly re-exposing yourself to the same chemicals, your body has a really hard time keeping up. But yeah, when protein, I talk a lot about protein mostly from the standpoint of just being metabolically healthy, because when we're trying to conceive, it is um, very typical that you might struggle with your conception because your body just doesn't feel very safe. And a body that doesn't feel safe is not going to prioritize conception in any way. And so that's talking about like high levels of cortisol in your body. And protein really helps, especially in the morning, but I think throughout the whole day, getting 30 grams of protein in each of your big meals. Protein helps to balance your blood sugar. It helps to lower the cortisol patterns, and then create that metabolically healthy body that you need to have in order to prioritize things like progesterone over cortisol. But yeah, so I've always struggled with protein, getting enough. Like I've hyperglycemic or something. I always thought I was that, growing up because I'm like, I didn't eat enough protein to get really shaky, but I am a product of the 90s. So we ate like, all the terrible sugary cereals and all that stuff, and that was breakfast. But now, as an adult, one of my favorite, like my go-to protein rich breakfast, and I'm kind of a creature of habit, but it's soft boiled egg, a serving of whole milk cottage cheese, and like 2 or 3 chicken sausages, and then some roasted vegetables. Like that's breakfast. And in that, just in those things, the cottage cheese and the hard boiled egg, soft boiled egg, and like the chicken sausages and things like that. Like that's it. That's my 25 to 30 grams for the morning. I am set, and I'm full. I don't feel hungry, an hour or two later. So yeah, that's my most, because I'm a savory person. I don't do like smoothies typically. That's not what I like. But I mean, you can certainly get your protein that way. But that's just my go-to.
That actually sounds, I mean, that sounds delicious. Not only delicious, I felt like that actually doesn't take a ton of time to make. Because another thing is like people don't have time in the morning and they're just like, okay, forget it. I'm just going to grab a croissant, like grab something. But this is actually, you can actually cook your egg in advance, right? Like sausage, you can buy pre-made, but good quality ones. And veggie, you can prepare also in advance, and then you just warm it up,
Yeah,
and then you're good to go.
that's the case. Like
I love
everything
it.
was made in advance, right? Because I'm not only getting myself ready, but like most moms, we're getting our children ready too. And it's like, and she has to eat. She already knows. She's not even quite 5 years old yet, and she already knows like protein is important. So
Well, that's because she has a mom like you,
yeah,
which really
which drive it home.
was another reason to get all the, mom, ready to be mom ladies and whoever parents to get acquainted to this knowledge so then they can actually, their kids will grow up understanding this information. It's like such a good setup for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because once it's a habit for you, then it's really easy
Mhm.
to make it a habit for the kids. I learned all of this stuff, alongside my motherhood journey. I didn't have it down pat beforehand, but it's definitely if you can do it, if it can happen, then yeah, create these habits early on. So it's just second nature.
So, if you're thinking about, expanding your family, like how far in advance you would recommend someone to start making these low tox lifestyle changes?
I mean, ideally, I say 12 months. Like, give yourself the full year to do it. I think some couples decide maybe like they're going to have a baby and they want to immediately start trying. And that's exciting, absolutely. But I think if you give yourself a year, set yourself up with these healthy habits, give yourself time to make these low tox changes in the house, within your personal care, within like the bigger items in your home, and then start lowering your toxic burden. That's invaluable. And I think a year is a really, like, it's like the sweet spot because I think couples who do struggle with their fertility too, they're told like they have to try for a year before they can get any additional help. And so I say, like, make these changes then. Because we know that like the egg that you ovulate this month is impacted by what you were doing 3 months prior. And same with sperm. Like, a man can impact positively the quality of his sperm in just a matter of 3 months.
Mhm.
So I think if you give yourself a little bit longer, you're setting yourself up for success and a
Yep.
little less disappointment.
Absolutely. Yeah, we say minimum 3 months because that's how
Yeah.
long it takes for the egg and sperm to change to actually improve. But then like a year is absolutely much better because you can plan out some of the big ticket items and then also just give you time to try and plan.
Right.
And then like something we all often like are kind of not joking about, just mention is that people actually take a year, like they take a year to plan their
Yeah.
wedding, but nobody like it takes a year to plan for a newborn, but and that's like you literally like you can get divorced, but you cannot return this kid. It's like so much more important.
It is. It is so much more important, and it takes time too to if you're not metabolically healthy, it takes time for that to happen. That's not going to happen in 2 weeks of eating really well. It's not going to happen in a couple of months of watching your diet or whatever. It's just not. It just takes time, and so 12 months. That's what I say. It takes 12 months to conceive.
Yeah. Can you talk about how brands can make it challenging to really find like a low tox products?
Yeah. So, I mean, especially now, like, buzzwords like clean and non-toxic and all of that stuff, like those are any free from labels, like those are rampant. And greenwashing is it's a big, it's a big deal. It's a big part of, how brands get people to buy their products. And so, promising non-toxic claims, or just in general, the packaging looks, it's green, or it says, healthy, or whatever. I mean, brands do a fantastic job of marketing and, making it difficult to discern between what's actually a good low tox product and, one that isn't quite that. And I see that a lot. Like a lot of my content, even last year was,
Mhm.
showing the discrepancies between like brands that we think are actually like non-toxic or really good, and how they're hiding endocrine disruptors in them, and products that, I mean, excuse me, ingredients that are synthesized from carcinogens, like literal carcinogenic ingredients in our products. And so I think that's always shocking to a lot of people because you just assume that marketing has to be it has to be factual, it has to be true, and it doesn't. There are no regulations for things like non-toxic and clean. The word organic in itself, just by itself, that's not a regulated term. So, you have to be really careful. And I think because greenwashing is so rampant, I think it's really difficult for people to find, truly low tox products. A lot of them, unfortunately, are, you have to buy them online because they're not going to be in these big box stores. Not always, sometimes, but not always.
You have a lot of great content about your low tox database. What is it? Like, how
Yeah.
can our followers, use it?
Yeah, so I actually launched the Low-Tox database 2 years ago on Black Friday. So I'm coming up on my 2-year anniversary for that. But it was really my response to, these these companies who greenwash, consumers. And I because of the courses that I took and what I studied, I was able to, understand ingredient toxicity and understand ingredient like each individual ingredient. And so I literally like vet products and I vet them for their ingredient lists. I look at certificates of analysis and I put them all into a database. And so it's completely categorized, everything you can need for your entire body, for your entire home, for the whole family. And then it says categorized, hair care, makeup, SPF, all of the different categories that you can think of. And then I have products in there that I have literally vetted for ingredient safety. And so I think what people find is that they're really shocked at the brands that I don't include. Because we have databases like the EWG and Yuka, and those are great when you're starting out. But they're honestly the standard is not even as high as my own. So the products that you find in the database are they might anyway. Just to say
Yep.
that I personally believe that my database has the products on there that you really want to be using and not necessarily ones that you're going to find on the other apps.
I love it. I love it. I love it. We're gonna be listing that. So you're also, you mentioned the air filtration many times, and I also want to mention we're like a couple minutes over. Do you still have a little bit of time? Because I have two more questions for you. Because this is such not too much, yeah, and it's like you have such a fun conversation. So when it comes to air filtration, like what do you look for in an air purifier?
Right. Okay. So, I mean, HEPA is the minimum standard. It has to be a HEPA filter. Ideally, it's going to have HEPA and like a carbon gas VOC filter with it as well. You want to look for one that exchanges the air in the entire room. So you're looking for one that fits the size of the room that you're putting it into. Those one size fit all like air filters. Those aren't it. They're not cutting it. You want to make sure that they are, able to trap VOCs like formaldehyde, bacteria, viruses. You want to make sure that they're rated for that. Um, you know, it's like 0.003 of a micron is like the standard. That's the minimum standard. If it's not capturing particulate matter of that size, then it is not worth your money. And because of that, on the database, I have 3 filter brands, air filter brands that I trust and that I recommend, and that's it so far. I mean, it takes a lot to earn my trust and for me to put it on the database so that other people know that they can trust it as well.
But I also love it. It's only 3, right? Then you don't have to make a lot of choices by choosing
Yeah,
the 3. I kind of love that.
that's the great thing about like low tox lifestyle is that honestly, you do have fewer choices, but that it's easier and you spend less money in the long run. You really do. But we know that air filter and air quality is linked to brain development and respiratory health, especially in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy when babies' brains are really developing, and air quality in your home is dramatically going to impact yeah, the fetal brain development. So it's just important. It's really necessary to have a quality air filter, because the air quality in our homes are typically 5 to 10 times more polluted than the outdoor air. And people, I think, are sometimes shocked by that. But all of the things that we have in our house, especially if you use a lot of fragrances or you burn candles, stuff like that, just even, your furniture off gassing, you've gotta, the air quality inside your home is it's just typically worse unless you're like exposed to a wildfire outside. I mean, the air quality is just not as good. So we have to have air filters in the house.
So besides avoiding, chemicals, so what are some other ways you can actually enhance your low tox living?
So a couple of my favorites are actually like blocking blue light, artificial blue light, as much as possible. I have like blue light blocking light bulbs in the house. I wear the blue light blocking glasses in the evening. Yep. It's just, you want to make sure that you're getting like quality products in that space. But yeah, blocking the artificial light, blue light, is incredibly toxic. Artificial blue light, especially at times of the day when we wouldn't normally be exposed to it. I mean, once the sun goes down, like there's no more blue light in the sky. You don't want to be exposing yourself to blue light artificially. It's definitely linked to higher risk of cancer, especially in women. I love red light therapy. I'm a big proponent of red light therapy. My daughter knows anytime she even has like the slightest hint of a sniffle, she's in front of the red light. I love it for just the support that it gives at a cellular level. But then other things, honestly, it's like, don't think you have to strive for perfection. That's going to make you crazy. You can't do it. So just avoid that altogether. Like, don't strive for perfection. Just strive to do, better than, you did last week or last month. And then really just try not to freak out, because it's a lot of information and there are a lot of environmental toxicants, and we're learning, every day we're learning more and more about hormone disrupting chemicals and what different kinds of hormone disrupting chemicals are out there. And so, yeah, just really try not to freak out.
I think because there's like, so much information and so much to learn, and a lot of time, and people do get overwhelmed, and then, you're talking about buying this, buying that, and then if they're like, in this preconception stage or even during pregnancy, it just gets really overwhelming. So it's like really nice to have someone to give them a little bit hand holding and then support. So my next question is, how can someone work with you?
Yeah. So, the low tox database, I love that because not only do you get access to that so you know what to buy, but it comes with like a chat access to me. So you can ask me questions. You're in a community with other, women who've gotten access to the database, and, you can bring ingredient labels to me. I can vet them with you, but just in general, just answer your low tox questions. And so that comes with subscribing to the database. But then the other way to work with me too is to book. I have 90-minute sessions where we can really like get granular on a specific topic, or I can just kind of give you an overarching idea of what you need to do. Like, you walk away with a plan for like how you're going to, get through this preconception phase, or this, whatever phase you're really in. But, I do focus on that preconception phase. But yeah, you walk away with a plan with that. So would be my two best options: getting access to the database so that you have access to me, or just signing yourself up for like a 90-minute session and like really going deep on a topic.
Love it. How can someone get in touch with you?
The best way is my Instagram. I am on TikTok as well, but Instagram I'm just better at it. So definitely message me there. But my link in bio, you'll see my website. I do have a website there. I have like a learn section, where you can sign up for things. That occasionally I'll do a course, very rarely, but you can also sign up for the database and the 90-minute session there as well.
Great, great. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us. And then thank you for staying overtime. It's like, I felt like we could be just like bouncing and keep talking. But until next time.
Absolutely, Gemma. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.